Hello everyone, welcome to the Persistence Manager webinar for this year. Probably you attended some of the previous sessions, which were the previous years. This year I think it's going to be quite special. We're going to present to you more or less the full-blown product, and together with it also some scenarios which we implemented with customers. To show you the full potential and capabilities of the Persistence Manager product, which, if you don't know yet, is about simplifying the design, the delivery, and the support of your business workflows. For those of you who are not able to attend the full session, or maybe they skip something, the slides will be available on SlideShare, and you'll get the link after the presentation. And also you will be able to see the fully recorded video on YouTube. Let's start. So with the overview, these are some of the capabilities and functionalities on one screen. I'll start with one of the, I would say, important ones, which is unlimited number of workflows supported. This means that once you get the Persistence Manager as a product, you're able to maintain as many workflows as you need inside. There's no limitation, neither from a technical perspective nor from a licensing perspective. So basically you are free to have as many as you need, and of course the more you have, the better return on investment you have for this product. Another very important capability, full audit trail, meaning not only audit trail regarding the who did what, but also which data was changed during your workflow on every separate process step inside, and how this data was changed by the person that basically processed the task. So you have not only, let's say, audit trail from the perspective of the participants, but also an audit trail from the perspective of the data. And this data is stored as long as you need it, and you have access to it even if the process is being closed, which is sometimes complicated with standard workflow engines and tools where the data is not available after the process has been finished. Okay, another very important thing is that it's made to be run by the business. So this means that it's very intuitive, very easy to configure. There are user interfaces which run on Fiori and SAP UI5 for almost every single functionality. And you can basically design and configure most of the things you can do in a process basically just by clicking and configuring through a UI. And we're going to see that also, of course, in the live demo which follows this presentation. It's cloud ready, meaning that we can process workflows which are built on top of the workflow service for the SAP Cloud platform, and this can be attached to backend calls, and the backend calls come from on-premise where the Persistence Manager would be installed. And you'll see a more detailed architecture about how this is possible in the next slide, where I'm going to talk a little bit more about the setup which you would need if you'd like to run in the cloud. Simple, intuitive, and delightful UIs. Of course, those are derived terms from what SAP UI5 and Fiori is all about. And of course, since all those UIs are based on those principles, they inherit them all the same. And of course, on top of that, I can add that they're not only simple, intuitive, and delightful, but they're also fully automatically generated from scratch. And we're going to get to that point also a little bit later. Some unique features. which we have inside, of course, in order to stay innovative and competitive. And if you want to have something in your hands that nobody else does, normally there should be some uniqueness in your product, and we're going to talk about it in more detail later in the presentation. But we have some unique features which we think are not available out of the box in other frameworks, which more or less are capable of doing workflow management and configuration. Live reporting, another very important thing, meaning that you have up-to-date reports about the status and about the progress of your workflows, meaning when you enter a certain workflow, it's always the question, of course, how is my workflow proceeding? Do I have some showstopper there? Do I have somebody that is taking too long to approve? All those answers can be very easily figured out using this live reporting, which of course I'm going to show you also in the presentation. Runs on any device, and of course this is also something that is inherited from the fact that we use the SAP UI5 libraries and Fiori guidelines. They are made to be responsive, so I'll also show you how one and the same user interface, the one we spoke about that is being automatically generated, is adapting itself according to the device which we're using. So this will be also part of the demo. So much for the overview. Of course, every product has a price tag, and our price tag is the same for everyone, 29,900 euro, and this covers all of those features without any limitations. So let's talk about the architecture, which we try to depict here on this slide. We have on the bottom, of course, there's always some kind of a application server. Could be your ERP, business suite, CRM, an MDM or an MDG or an MDG solution, a business warehouse, a HANA database, or any other third-party server or services which you might be using until now in your landscape. In order to install the Persistence Manager, you would need a SAP Application Server Java. And of course, there are two scenarios here which relate to the fact that if you would like to use the Persistence Manager on-premise, then it will be completely sufficient that you install the Persistence Manager not on a separate server, but rather on the process orchestration server, which combines the business process management and the business rules management components. However, if you would like to use it in the cloud, obviously those business process management and business rules management components are not needed, since in the cloud there is already two services, which the rules service is still in beta, but the workflow service is already publicly available, which can be subscribed to, and you can use the REST APIs which the Persistence Manager provides through the HANA Cloud, to the Cloud Connector, over a secure tunnel to the cloud, and then consume them in the workflow service or in the rule service in order to build the workflow which you would need. At the end, both, no matter which approach you take, either the cloud approach or the on-premise approach, both are then using one and the same, let's say, code, or one and the same approach to generate the end user interfaces with, as I mentioned, SAP UI5 libraries and following the Fiori guidelines, which makes them, of course, platform independent since they run in the browser. And here, browser compatibility is a very big topic, which I think we addressed in a very good way. And you'll see later in the demo also that I'll be able to demonstrate you the user interface being rendered not only in popular browsers like Chrome, but also in, for example, Internet Explorer, which is, you might think, a deprecated browser, but after all, it's a corporate standard among many companies. And supporting it needs an additional effort and additional extra mile, which we did because we know that Internet Explorer is important for our customers. Okay. Some packages which could get you quick up and running with the persistence manager. Of course, those are related to the fact only if you would like to, let's say, test run the product, which I would highly recommend, of course, to first test it and see if it works for you, and not to go blindly and install it just for the sake of having it. There is an optional package which is more or less related to the installation and the setup, and of course this installation and setup is highly dependent on the scenario you would like to run. If you would like to run a cloud scenario, then obviously we need a cloud connector to be installed and set up, which basically could be done also by your basis team, but we offer it as an option. Of course, there is a special NetWeaver server check if all the settings and all the setup is done on your NetWeaver server according to the installation guide which we need for a persistence manager. Then, of course, the persistence manager installation itself, the setup of the license, the initial setup of the database, and so forth, all those things can be either, of course, done by your basis team, given some documentation, installation and configuration documentation from us, or if you think that the amount which we set up here is okay for you, then we can do it for you too. Of course, in the cloud, you would also need to enable, for example, your workflow service, to set up all the permissions in the workflow service the way that they have to be usable for your users, and so forth. All those things, of course, are included into that package. The second package, of course, depends on the first one, and without it, we cannot go forward. So either you set up everything on yourself by yourself, or we help you with that. And the second package, the idea is that it's something like a very close collaboration between the customer and us, where we make, let's call it a design workshop, in which we define a very simple scenario, which we can make, we can run within a few weeks up to a month, depending on the complexity. So in a very short period of time, we'll be implementing this simple request approve workflow, for example, no matter if it's on cloud, in the cloud, or on premise. And then we are going to configure the persistence manager, and in a limited time span, we're going to have a result showing you basically how such a setup could work in your scenario. And of course, the idea of this design workshop is that at the end, you get something which can be easily extended to a more complex scenario. Not that we throw that away, but rather we take that and, of course, keep configuring and keep setting up until it's becoming a real workflow and a real solution at the end. For those of you who are feeling certain, because apart from the design and running, install and setup packages, of course, we can make a special demo for each one of the people that are interested, each one of the companies. And if they're feeling confident, of course, we can already start with a bigger project, which is a custom project according to the requirements which are given. And there, of course, all the things which are included, like solution proposal document, detailed project plan. We are going with the agile approach here, where we have a very fixed rollouts on a couple of weeks, depending, like 2-3 weeks, depends on the scenarios. And then, of course, very often we look for feedback from the customer in order to make sure that we are going in the right path and that we are not straying too far away, because, you know, this sometimes happens if you go with the, let's say, a waterfall approach, where you provide the customer with the final solution. At the end, they're not really happy with the delivery. This is something we are trying to avoid. About the reduced time for implementation, the optimized cost, and the rollouts, I'm going to talk a little bit later, how those are better with the product. Of course, the custom solution includes a training, because after all, we would like to make sure that the customer also has the capability to run Persistence Manager on their own. We are providing, of course, an enterprise support, which you can see here below with the 2 stars is the 21% of the license price. As long as you subscribe to this enterprise support fee, you are getting also automatically any free updates to the product for the period where you are entitled to your enterprise support. For the design and run, something very important, the star which you see there is also explained below. You are getting a trial license, which is for a limited period of time, so you don't have to pay about the product. It's installed free of charge on your system, and of course after a certain period of time it will expire unless you would like to continue with the full license. All right. Yes, something also very important. All the projects which are custom and based on certain requirements of the customer are produced on a fixed price basis. So this means we are evaluating your requirements, we're giving you a fixed price, and our guarantee on our side is that this fixed price will be the price you would have to pay at the end, not more, not less. So you have a very easy predictability of how much such a project would cost. A small comparison between what are the requirements when we talk about the on-premise version and about the cloud. Obviously, the future comes with the cloud, but it also has a little bit of more requirements because, after all, we have more components there. On-premise is a not relatively, but I would say quite easy setup. All you need is, of course, a process orchestration server where the business process management and business rules management are configured, because after all, those are the SAP workflow tools which are supported currently by the solution. And of course, what you need is a server, either the same one or another Java server where the persistence manager is installed and configured. So this more or less completes the requirements on the on-premise side. In the cloud, apart from the server where you would need on-premise in order to run again the persistence manager and to expose the REST interfaces to the cloud, you would need a cloud connector, which is standard. So if you want to communicate in hybrid scenarios from your on-premise to the cloud, you always need that cloud connector. So probably you already have it set up if you already have some implementations in the cloud. It has to be just extended to the respective REST URLs, and then again, of course, the persistence manager should be installed and configured, and you would need a SAP Cloud Platform account. You would need an enabled workflow service, and of course, if you would like to use also the rules, at the moment, as I said, they are in beta phase, but once they are publicly available, you should also have enabled rule services on the SAP Cloud Platform in order to benefit from all the scenarios possible. Just to mention here, if you have any questions and answers, please, yes, the answers come from me. If you have any questions, please write them down, and then at the end of the presentation and the webinar, we're going to have a Q&A where you can ask those questions in our chat. Yeah. So, getting back to the details, if you remember those icons, you have seen them also in the overview slide, but here, of course, with more details. One of the important things is that Persistence Manager is basically simplifying the coordination between different teams in your company. So this means, okay, teams like, for example, your process delivery team, your implementation team, or the business that is actually giving the requirements, they can all operate on one and the same tool and have view on what was set up and what is the idea basically to get to the final stage where we want to have a process or a workflow working in a certain way. And Persistence Manager is giving you the guide on how to achieve that. So all the different workflows which you put under the head of Persistence Manager, we can guarantee that they all are going to be delivered in one and the same fashion, because basically the framework limits your choices to the ones which are right. And okay, unlimited workflows, we already said that in the beginning. Same delivery approach, This is what we just said. Using the same delivery approach enables something else, which is very important, reusability. And you know, reusability is something very, very crucial in today's world. The more reusable components you have, the less time you need for every next workflow. So for example, if you set up already 3 workflows, the probability that you're going to reuse some of the things from those 3 workflows in the 4th one is very high, because as I told you, the delivery approach is every time the same, and it cannot stray too much away from how those workflows are delivered, because those are best practices which we gathered along the way. IBsolution is in the business process management consulting since basically since the product is available, from starting from NetWeaver 7.1.1 maybe. We had already projects there, and those are really, this product became the more or less the summary of all those best practices which we gathered along the years. Rapid workflow deployment, of course, this is something which we are very proud of. I think we are capable to deliver workflows much faster than the standard way, and this is also proven by some workflows which we already delivered. Standard workflow delivery normally ranges from let's say 3 to 6 months. For those which are 3 months up to 6 months, we can say we get a reduction of about 40 to 50%, depending on the scenario. Of course, this reduction gets even higher the more workflows you get in the persistence management, due to the reusability which I spoken about. Okay, the cloud. Actually, a very good coincidence that happened this year is the official release of the workflow service, of which we are very happy. And this workflow service, of course, enabled us to integrate not only with the business process management solution, but also with the workflow service that is in the cloud. So basically, you can run one and the same scenario either in the cloud or on premise, depending on the requirements which you have. Of course, here, if you're not sure which of the 2 scenarios to select, we can of course also consult you about what are the, let's say, the limitations, what are the better options, what is better if you run in the cloud, what is better if you run on premise. All those things, of course, we are quite aware of and can give you the right guidance in this. The innovation and the unique features of which we spoke about. One of them, I would say, is version management. And version management, we're going to look it up also later in the product, is something very unique, I would say, in this term. You know, for those of you who used business process management in the past, all the processes are being versioned anyway. But what is not versioned is inside the process. And this is what we try to achieve also with the product, to version also everything else that is also not related to the process. And I'll show you later what I mean. It's, I think, something which is quite a new concept, which I think comes very good along at our existing customers. PDF generation. Also a key factor. I've heard that a number of times before. Customers would like to have a printed copy of their user interface, just to show it to somebody, or to check some data. Paper is going away, but still having a PDF is not only about printing it, but rather having it as a archive storage. So after your process is finished, you need some evidence that actually exactly what you did in the process happened, and this data is organized in a special format and a special template inside a PDF. Value help, again, something very, very important in order to streamline and to make the input of the end users very easy. Basically, you are entitled to uploading and changing the value help on the fly. And that's exactly also what I'm going to show you in the demo. Probably you wish for something like that in your current workflows, but we managed to achieve it, and I'll show you how easy it is to actually really have a very fast and very easy value help update about your current fields. Then the participants diagram, I think this is something like our star feature. It's something that I haven't seen before. I hope that at some point of time maybe SAP makes it part of their products. But this is more or less making a forecast of your workflow flow. So what it means, you are changing some data in your diagram, and based on that data and certain calculations, so we are making a forecast how the different steps will look in the process and which participants are going to take place into the workflow. And you'll see that also in the demo later, because I'm sure right now you're not able to really depict how exactly this looks like. We spoke already about the full process and data audit and about the live reports, so I'm not gonna talk more about them. We're gonna see those in the demo. And of course, Fiori compliant user interfaces, auto-generated end user interfaces, and wide variety of supported browsers, which we try to extend as we speak. It's a bit hard, since you know SAP UI5 is based on JavaScript, and JavaScript, every single browser has its own JavaScript engine. But yeah, let's not go too much into the technical details. Those are things which we gladly would do for you. So, compatible with any device. This is something which we also spoke about, and I'll show you shortly in the demo. What's important to mention here is that Persistence Manager is not just about starting a workflow from scratch, but also it can be easily adapted to attach to an existing process. So this means you can have already your processes running either in the cloud or on-premise, running on BPM, and then you say, oh, okay, my process is very inflexible and I would like to make it more configurable, more easy to change, more better understandable for the business and so forth. And those things can be easily achieved if you connect the Persistence Manager to your existing workflow. And of course, there will be also some effort to do that, but yeah, it's not going to be comparable to the effort which would be needed to, of course, build a workflow from scratch. Okay, so let's step to the next slide, which is the benefits. And the benefits, I try to depict them here with the orange line. You see the classical project approach. If we assume that, of course, the cost is the maximum cost you are ready to give for a certain process, then Persistence Manager, the first big advantage is that it delivers on a very on a lower, let's say, cost and total cost of ownership for that respective process. And this comes not only from the fact that you are building more processes into one and the same tool, which you purchase only one, but also this comes, of course, from the fact that the time to production, which is needed in a classical project approach and with Persistence Manager, it's much less, and obviously time is money. So this is something which comes as a clear outcome. We gain a lot of improvement or a lot of benefit on the flexibility side, because we think that actually with Persistence Manager you gain the maximum possible flexibility which you could get in such a process configuration. And you see right now there are so many configuration options that actually it will take some time in order to get around them all. But once you get that in grip, then you are able to change, I would say, the complete workflow just by configuring certain aspects of the Persistence Manager. On quality, where is the quality coming from? Of course, reusability and quality are let's say, going hand in hand. Once you build something and this is something that is working, we are making it a reusable component, and this component can be used also in other workflows, and obviously once we have such components, their quality is not changeable, it's a constant, and those components are being reused, and following that we gain a better, let's say, a better and more stable workflows. Ease of operation. This is something which is related to the administration, more or less, of the process, because probably you had that in the past. Once a workflow is delivered, it's delivered from an how should I put it, from a end user perspective. So for the end user, yes, it's relatively easy to use. Probably it has a very nice interface. It all depends, of course, on how the implementation partner did that, but there is not much which is done in the context of really administrating and really maintaining this process running and maintaining it in a good shape. And additionally, because as we know, business is very dynamic, when a business change comes, you should be able very easily to make the adaptation without big efforts and without big risk. And this is exactly where Persistence Manager comes in, that enables you to make changes on the fly, test them on the fly, and then really release them to production in a very short period of time. And this is something on which we're going to emphasize also in the demo, which is coming, by the way, with the next slide. So I'm almost finished with the slides. One last thing, of course, for the ease of operation. Here we are also talking for following the Fiori guidelines and following the principles which are best practices for SAP UI5 implementations. Of course, the delivered user interfaces are also integratable in Fiori Launchpad, if you would like to, or also usable on any device like mobiles, tablets, and so forth. Okay, so switching to the next slide, which is our demo, and I'm going to stop now the presentation and show you the demo. So we have here a standard NetWeaver login. Probably you've seen that before. For those of you who customized it, good for them. For those that didn't, then it looks like this. And here I'm going to log in with my user, like anybody would, of course, unless you have single sign-on. But for the purposes of this demo, we removed it. And what you see is the first screen that appears during the start of a certain business workflow. And what you first see here is, of course, that we are introducing a new term, which is not probably so popular in the world of workflows, called business role. The business role is something more than actually a portal role, and something quite more than just a group, because groups and roles, they are quite nice to organize structures, to organize the navigation of the portal, but they have no business meaning. So we thought about a concept which introduces not only the benefits of the roles and the groups, but also introduces a business concept to them. And I'll show you, of course, what I mean. You see here I have 3 rows, and each one of these rows contains certain number of versions. Yeah, and you see some of them have some certain versions available, others have others, and this is dependent, of course, on the fact what kind of permissions my user currently has. And this is the nice thing about Persistence Manager, that actually you don't have to worry about your permissions. The workflow will automatically detect those and tell you what kind of possibility you have to start the workflow. And since right now my user is attached to more than one business role, that's why I have a choice here to say, okay, I'm responsible obviously for Italy and Germany in my workflow, and I have the possibility to start a request as either Germany or Italy. The thing here is that you see that some of the for example, the difference between a requester admin and a requester is that I see more versions here and I see only one version here. So why do I see this difference? Because the admin functionality is giving us more capabilities to start actually not only the default version, of which I'm going to talk about what's the default version in a minute, but also to be able to start, let's say, working versions, active versions, and also, of course, the default version. Once we get to the explanation of the versions, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But what I would like to show you right now is that I'm going to go to the user management. So let me switch, okay. And in the user management, what I'm going to do, these are two of my workflows, and I'm going to pick this one, which I started also, just before now. And I'm going to go to I have here a wildcard search, so I'm going to look for my requester admin _ Italy. There we go. Actually, let's look at my requester IT. Okay, there you go. So I'm going to go to this one. And what I see is my user is attached here. Okay, and I have properties. And when I go to these properties, what I can see here is that I can start a process, but actually I'm not the administrator of that process. And that's exactly the property which I have to change in case I don't want to be able to start a process with this role. So let me show you how easy is this. I just go here, I put here false, I save that, close it, go back to my first screen, I refresh, and the requester IT row is gone. So just by changing one property, I'm able to manipulate basically who and how can start a certain workflow. The same thing about the administration. So basically the requester admin, he has a special property which gives him the permissions to see all those special versions, which we're going to talk about. And of course, if this version is not if the role is not configured to be an admin, then we are going to be able to see only the default version. Okay, so much about the talking. Let's now open the UI, and what I'm going to do is just select the working version because this is the one we prepared for you. And I'm going to start the UI. So the UI, as I told you, right now is retrieving the configuration from the persistence manager, and you see in a very few seconds you get the display of the UI, and you see there are a lot of options here which you can fill in. It's a very complex UI with about 260 fields, and those 260 fields, they have very complex dependencies between them, and I'll show you some of them in a minute. So you have here a lot of fields. This is as we said, a credit management application. So you have, of course, you can populate here the limits, you can populate securities about those limits, you can fill in the performance of the certain customer for which the credit is going to be requested, fill in turnover, get some previous years, and so forth. So all of these things which you see here, of course, are configurable. And which is also very nice is that all of these things are also able to be stored in a template. And this is done here. So if I want to store some of my data as a template and use it later to start my my workflow, I can do so. Of course, now I don't have any data, but I'll show you how to load one template. So if I start here from template and pick my personal template and load it, and automatically you see that my data will be populated, and all these different fields which were previously disabled are now populated with the right data from the template. And of course, I'm able, of course, to change that data and to add additional data on top of it. You see here we have also some indicators which are important. For example, how the next year is performing compared to the previous year, some nice gimmicks. We have some descriptions, for example, like currencies, not only euro, but also K-euro or any kind of currency you would like to use We have here some performances which are in days. We have dates, of course, and we have some previous credit limits, requested credit limits, and so forth. We have securities. Here there are some special calculations behind those securities, and those calculations, of course, are also configurable. And you can say, okay, what's the formula for calculating, let's say, the total security amount? Okay. What is also very important is that right now I'm just going to remove this credit limit here. I'm just going to delete it, and I'm going to try to start a workflow. You see automatically we have a lot of validations, which are not only saying what's the problem, but also, for example, in the credit limit section, I can go and say focus, and then it will tell me, okay, automatically, it shows me that right now this line, which is the total line, has a credit limit which is not enough in order to start the process, because there is a certain validations which are behind. So, for example, I can also go here, and if it's a field which I can fill, then the cursor will be automatically positioned there. And let's see, we have also some other fields which are empty. Okay, there, yeah. And if I click, automatically the UI is going to position me at the right place. I don't have to scroll and to look for the right place where my data is missing. So I can populate this data. Let's say today the 9th and the 10th. Okay. And I'm going to go back and populate also this field here. So it was, let's put 233, it doesn't matter. Okay, now this error is gone. You see I have no more errors. So now I assume that if I click on the start workflow, then everything should be fine. But before I do so, I would like to show you some other very cool features. For example, the search. So the search here on top is again a very nice feature which allows you to look for specific fields inside of the user interface. Since in 250 fields, it's very hard to find the right one. So we are looking here for legal, and there we go. If I click on it, it will automatically position my user interface on the exact place where this is positioned. And I can select any of the legal entities which I have here. Okay, of course, navigation can be done also using the standard object page. This is something which is quite standard for Fiori and for SAP UI5, the object page layout. And I can navigate either like this, or I can simply scroll through the page. Additional buttons which you see here on top is the request information, where I see my request, which is my row, which I use to start, which is my ID, and which is the version, very important, the version of the configuration which I have. Then I have some comments. I can leave a comment. So, hello, webinar. Okay, there you go. And automatically it also shows me at which step this was left and which date and hour. And of course, I can also have attachments. And those attachments, I can attach here some files if I would like to. Those are stored in the ECM repository of the NetWeaver server. Then comes the highlight, as I told you, the participants diagram, which if I click, it's going to generate the forecast. And there you go. So based on the credit limit which I entered, let me show you. So 566, okay. This is the diagram which I have here, and those are the different steps which I would have to do. So if I click on a certain step, I can see exactly which is the row, and also I can see the people that are part of this row. To show you something very interesting, and that this is not a fake, I will change this to a higher limit. So 799. The total limit becomes over 1 million. Okay, let's see what will be the impact here. There we go. We have a different type of a flow. Okay, we have a parallel step, some sequential steps, then we have again a parallel step. I can zoom in, zoom out, drag it, drop it, whatever. Yeah, you can do all these nice things with it. And of course, the most important thing, I can click on it, it zooms in smoothly and shows me the step which is responsible, or the business row which is responsible in this case. Of course, here configurations are also possible. If your workflow is dynamic, you can be, your right now is disabled, but you are able to basically configure which is the next step in your process if you'd like to do so and have the right permissions. Okay, so closing this one, I'm going to try to start the workflow now. Hopefully no errors. Okay, and what I get is that I get a workflow ID, and I get that I started with this business workflow, and then everything is successfully started, which is great. So what follows now is, of course, I would like to know where my process is. So what I'm going to do is basically just go to the reporting cockpit. Okay, and then I'm going to go to my group credit management workflow, and I have a few possibilities here. I can look at my requests, which I started, and since I started this request, probably should be here. Then I have all requests and also my involvement. So let's look at my requests, and there is my workflow which I just started. So 6712, if you remember the workflow ID, that was exactly the one I started. And I have here some next steps, and if you remember, the next steps in the process was a parallel step. And in the parallel step, obviously, I have two roles which are responsible. I have the finance director and the country manager. I can look at a more detailed report looking up here, which gives me not only my step, but also all previous steps. This is related to the audit trail, which I spoke about. So I have when the process was created, when I entered it, it took me about 7 minutes to complete it. Impossible, but that's a fact. So I started then the workflow, and then the next step which came in was the country manager and the finance manager and the finance director. And those are the responsible business roles. I have also a task instance ID, you see here. So anytime I would like to make a reference back to the business process management and to map my task to the exact task in the process, I very easily can do this using this task instance ID and look for my task, for example, in the manage section of the tasks. Okay, going back. So reporting, yes, I can look at the, this is very important, I can look at the workflow data. So no matter that I'm not anymore the processor of this task, I can go to the workflow data, and then I can see a report with all the data that was maintained for my workflow, which I just started. So you can see that here. You see all the data. Of course, it's a read-only format, but more or less it's the same data which I submitted. Here is my request. You remember 799 with 1 million whatever, and I can look at that data. And of course, this is just for my let's say test purposes. Okay, and then what I can do here, of course, is I can also print that. So let's see. Okay, what comes up? This is how the PDF generation that I spoke about, and of course you see here also the comments that I left are also there. This is the highlighted button. I'll show you in a second. Of course, the PDF generation takes some time. I mean, it's a 260 or something fields. There we go, and I'll save it on my desktop, and I'll open it, and there we go. I have the data which I had in my workflow, and the data is structured in a very nice way. Of course, for a PDF, it cannot look the same like SAP UI5, but for a PDF, it follows the same structure. You see, those are the separate navigation paths, and everything is happening on the fly, which is the nicest thing about that. Okay, so going back to the reports. Okay, 6. Excuse me, I clicked on the wrong button. I have to close that. Okay, and I'm going to go to the comments. And the comment here, you see, this is the comment that I had left before. Of course, I cannot leave any comments in the report section because this is just a report, and I cannot manipulate the user interface here. Okay, so going back to the reporting, more or less, this is the same if you open all requests or my involvements. Just the difference is that all requests, of course, you need some special permissions to monitor all the requests about this type of workflow. And in my involvements, you would need, of course, to have control over the steps in which you were involved, for example, like an approver. Yeah. So these are the different reports, but basically they report on the same date and they look absolutely the same. So because we are already up with the time, let me show you something important, and this is the administration part. So this is the administrative part. You see, even before you saw that we had the group credit management and transfer price as two separate processes, and this is exactly what you see here. They are configured with their respective versions. And what is nice to see and actually to know is that I'm going to open also the other workflow which we prepared for you, and you see that actually it looks absolutely the same. You see, there's no difference here. So you think right now I'm opening the previous workflow, but no, this is a new workflow which has other rows, other setup. Everything looks the same. So you can understand support goes down immediately because everything should be supported in the same way. So let me show you something here, that even the user interface and all the operations which you are aware of course, it's a different user interface, but after all, there are absolutely the same behavior, absolutely the same features, same request information, comments, attachments, participants diagram being generated. Everything is the same. The notification area, really absolutely the same approach. And this is, again, as I told you, of course, configured out of the persistence manager. So let's see how the configuration happens in the last 5 minutes very quickly, and then of course we'll be open for any questions. So let's switch to the configuration. Okay, again, process control center, I have the possibility to, of course, operate on the processes which I have privilege for. This can be, of course, accessed and controlled over the process administration. And I would select, this is the option to go for a working version or an active version. I'll show you right now what's the difference. I'll go for the working one, just to show you the switch. Okay, and what you see here is I have the different tiles. What I can do basically with this process, I have my versions here. You see I can switch between my working version, my active versions, and the active version with the star is my default version. Okay, and so because I spoke so much about version management, let's go there. So version management. And this is the cockpit where basically the magic happens. So what kind of magic I'm talking about? I'm talking about magic related to the fact that here you are able to create different versions, activate them, deactivate them, or archive them, create the working version. And the beauty of this thing is that the working version is the one where you can make changes. So the working version is really your place, and that's why I selected this working version in my scenario, is the place where you can do the changes. And once you do the changes in this working version, those are automatically and immediately active in the user interface. Once you activate a version, it's available for transport. This is very important. You cannot transport working versions. You can transport only active versions, but active versions, of course, cannot be changed anymore. So this is the difference. You can only use them as they are, or if you want to change something, you should start a new working version. And let me show you something which is quite nice, and this will be probably the last thing which we have time for, or okay, maybe one more thing. So very quickly go over the configuration of the business roles, just to explain. You remember we spoke about the organizations and the business meaning behind them. So I used Germany as an example. So let's look at the keys. And you see here actually that based on the country, we are able to provide special fields which are really defining the country as such. Yeah. So here, of course, this is just test data, some company code and some name. But here, of course, you can get some data from real data from your ERP system and then provide that, which basically identifies Germany as such. And this data is important because this is used for filtering later of the value helps and so forth. So this is what brings meaning to the business role. Now let's look at another scenario which I want to show you also. And this is the case. Okay, I spoke to you how easy it is to change something in the UI, but let me show you how easy it really is. So we go to the version, the working version, and then what I would like to do is I would like to load rating here. So I'll just pick here one agency, let's say this one, and then I'll click on the value help. Nice, I have a value help. I select one. Good, that's working. But what I want to do is I want to pick another one, and then I click on it. Oh, this one is not working. Let's see what could be the problem. So let's go back to the control center. Okay, and then I go to the value help section, which I haven't shown you yet. And the value help section allows you to load value help either from a file or from an external system. External system could be your ERP, MDM, or any other system which is of course connected to Persistence Manager. For now, we support out of the box connection to Business Suite. Okay, so here I'm going to load it from file just for the sake of simplicity. I have here the rating which you saw before. I see that I have 0 entries inside, and I want to load the value help. And I browse that and I say, okay, this is my rating, and I say I have to pick a column, a key column, which is my rating, and I would like to load the value help. Okay, done. So let's see what happens. I go back to my task, I click refresh, I pick my version. And then I go to the create agency and I pick the one that I wanted before. I click on the value help. Ta-da! There we go. So we have the value help already. I can pick one and I can see that already here. So you see, I did the change in less than 1 minute. So changes can be applied really easy to the interface. There are layouts, there are different settings where you can configure specific layouts for specific business roles. Unfortunately, due to the limited time, I'm not going to be able to show you everything. But let's see if I missed something. I don't think so. Yes, of course. Let me show you Internet Explorer. Very important. So this is Internet Explorer. And I would have to log in here because I have my session, of course, from Chrome. Okay, I'm not sure why I see a blank screen, but okay, give me a second. Okay, let's try something else. Okay, just give me a second. Okay, okay, there we go. Okay, so you see this is the same user interface, is the same behavior which we had from the Chrome, and I'll show you now. You have the loading screen, so this is the same, and again all the functionalities which you had before. So absolutely the same behavior that you had. So this is more or less in Internet Explorer. You don't see the difference, although believe me, in the back a lot of different things are happening between Chrome and Internet Explorer. This is really two completely different browsers that behave completely different. Okay, last thing which I want to show you, of course, loading from template is one thing. I can also start building my UI like that. And you see adding a certain brand here is also automatically adding it to the other places in my UI, for example, here and here. And then I get another column even here. So you see everything is quite dynamic. If I just change or add another brand, then I'll see another edit title column and row. So really everything is quite dynamic happening here. And of course there are possibilities for calculations and different changes to be made on the UI level. Okay, so this completes the demonstration. Of course, questions are welcome. I'll switch back to the presentation and you can ask the questions in the chat. So, okay, this is the contact data. If you'd like to contact us, please feel free to state your questions in the chat, and maybe we can also show some of the things which you asked in the demonstration if we prepared, of course, for that. Okay, we'll give you just a few minutes to summarize the questions. In the meantime, as I mentioned before, you'll get an email after the session with the recording and also the slide share for the presentation. And then we are going to talk about the not going to talk about, but you're going to also get a survey which is answering some questions in order to get a certificate out of this webinar. Okay, we have a question. How is the UI defined configured? Okay, so let me go back quickly. Yes, we haven't shown that, unfortunately. There was no time to do so, but very quickly. Okay, so we need to go to, okay, so let's go back. And the configuration of the user interface is happening through this configuration tab, and you see here you have fields and user interfaces. So I've shown you already the business roles. So how it's working is the following. We have a setup of you see 262 fields. Okay, each one of these fields has certain properties like length, type, label, and so forth. Those can be either, of course, typed manually, which is probably not the best option. They can be imported from Excel, or they can be simply loaded from a backend system. And each of these, for example, those that have value helps, they also have configuration here. This is where the search help is coming from. You see, this is the name which we used later in the configuration, in the setup of the value help. And then based on those fields, of course, what is missing is the setup of the user interfaces, which is done here. And there you have different layouts which you can configure. And then you have also the configuration, which is which business role, which I already defined, for which layout is configured. So you see it in a second. There is, so these are the roles, you remember, which we look for. I can look here for my requester, IT. There you go. So this is my business role, and this is the layout which I'm using, group credit management. And here I have even a preview. So this means that without the need to actually start a process as I did, I can click here on the preview button, and guess what? I'm going to see the very same layout, of course, without any functionality and any logic inside. And you see also I didn't get the prompt to ask me which business row I want to use, because I already know which row I have to use. And I can see here how my UI is going to look like based on the preview. So if I want to change something, I can change it and then do a preview again and do a preview again until I'm happy with the user interface, and only then we can start with the with the process or with the setup of the workflow. Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much for participating. I hope you enjoyed the session. I no, actually I'm quite sure there were a lot of unanswered questions. So please get in contact with us, and of course, if you're interested, we can always prepare also a very special and personalized demo for your case. Thanks again, and have a great day.